common method for introducing a guest to the setting of a story is to have the guest find a note from a mysterious person telling him or her to meet at such and such place at such and such a time. For example, in the beginning of Robert Heinlein's story, Gulf, a man is approached by a mysterious person who tells him that there are important answers to be found at the bottom of a specific ocean. The man follows directions, finds an answer, and returns to report it. I remember reading Gulf in junior high, thinking, what is this? But liking it well enough. It was one of a number of stories in Heinlein's Juveniles that I read that summer, and I took them as serious literature. I don't recall being particularly bothered by the idea of someone sending a note to another person to meet him somewhere for some purpose. It was clear enough that Heinlein was making fun of the gimmick. He did it so often that it's hard to imagine he didn't realize how lame it was. But I just assumed the whole thing was in good fun. I have since realized that I was completely wrong. Heinlein did it so often that it's hard to imagine he didn't realize how lame it was, but he never saw it as a gimmick at all. He never once thought about it as a gimmick. He used the gimmick because that was what worked for him. The story would have been much worse for him if he had tried to use some other device. Heinlein had the best sense of humor of any writer I've ever known. He could get away with anything. The only thing that really bothered him was people taking things too seriously. He used the gimmick so often that it's hard to imagine he didn't realize how lame it was. But he never saw it as a gimmick at all. He used the gimmick because that was what worked for him. The story would have been much worse for him if he had tried to use some other device. In his book Time Enough for Love, Heinlein discussed his use of gimmicks. There are no gimmicks, there are only tricks, and I know how to use them. Some of my gimmicks are as obvious as a new pair of shoes. I never tell the reader how I'm going to do something. I do it. I use the word trick instead of gimmick because I think tricks are more honest than gimmicks. Gimmicks are deceptions. When I use a gimmick, I'm trying to deceive the reader. When I use a trick, I'm trying to inform him. But sometimes a gimmick can be used to deceive the reader. I don't try to impress you with my cleverness. I try to show you the way the trick is done. That way, you will see how the trick could be done and, better yet, how you could do it yourself. This is a fine distinction between a gimmick and a trick. If you are doing it yourself, you are not deceived. The most basic rule of writing is, never use a gimmick you haven't seen yourself. If you're going to use a gimmick, first see how the gimmick is used, then invent your own variation on it. I never tell the reader how I'm going to do something. I do it. I use the word trick instead of gimmick because I think tricks are more honest than gimmicks. Gimmicks are deceptions. When I use a gimmick, I'm trying to deceive the reader. When I use a trick, I'm trying to inform him. But sometimes a gimmick can be used to deceive the reader. I don't try to impress you with my cleverness. I try to show you the way the trick is done. That way, you will see how the trick could be done and, better yet, how you could do it yourself. This is a fine distinction between a gimmick and a trick. If you are doing it yourself, you are not deceived. The most basic rule of writing is, never use a gimmick you haven't seen yourself. If you're going to use a gimmick, first see how the gimmick is used. Then invent your own variation on it. It's tempting to assume that a gimmick is only a gimmick when the story gets in the way of the story. But there's no reason why a gimmick should do anything except what it's supposed to do. Distract the reader from the story. Move him through the story. Move him out of his comfort zone. Take him into the author's comfort zone. Put him into the world of the story, and move him around within that world. A gimmick might also do all these things and provide additional information about the world or characters or both. A gimmick can be used in any way that works, and that's what makes it such a powerful tool for the writer. But it can't be used in any way that doesn't work, and that's where things go wrong. The problem is not with the gimmick, but with the use of the gimmick. That's where things go wrong. This is a good time to mention that the term gimmick comes from the circus and vaudeville. A circus clown's work was called gimmicking. A vaudeville performer's work was called jimcraking. It's not the same as a circus or vaudeville act, but it's close enough to explain why gimmick is called a gimmick.